Welcome to Soleil After Dark, conversations on sex, trauma, and the body. A podcast guided by passionate trauma and sex therapists who talk about the stuff people don't always feel safe talking about. We're here to explore the real-life intersections of sexuality, trauma, healing, intimacy, and the mind-body connection. Our hope is that this podcast feels like a grounded, stigma-free space. One that provides thoughtful conversation, education, and rays of hope and light to those keeping their secrets, fears, memories, and the most intimate parts of their lives hidden in the shadows. This is where the shadows soften, the conversation deepens, and healing begins. Right here.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Soleil After Dark, our podcast on sex, trauma, and the body. My name is Coley. I am a licensed clinical professional counselor here at Soleil, and I have two friends joining us today. Want to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, I'm Rachel Berg. I'm the practice director at Soleil. I am a licensed clinical professional counselor, a certified sex therapist, and also a certified drug and alcohol counselor.
Cool. Mm-hmm. And we have a new friend here today.
Hey. I'm Ashley Homa. I am a clinical support supervisor here at Soleil and psychotherapist and licensed clinical professional counselor.
Perfect. So today, for everyone joining, we wanted to bring up a topic that we feel like comes into a lot of the spaces that we are often in with clients. This could be couples, this could be sex therapy, this could be our regular old therapy. And that is shame, everyone's favorite. I wanted to start for those listening and just get a bit of a working definition. How do you guys define shame when you're working with it in the room with clients? What is shame?
Yeah, I conceptualize and define shame as like a global negative experience of self. So very self-evaluative or self-critical feeling of unworthiness. I think people often will identify as saying like, I'm bad versus something I did is bad. And I think shame is a very pro-social emotion, meaning it's very connected to being rejected or received by others. So oftentimes we see shame come up when people are fearing being rejected by their immediate communities or kind of their larger culture.
Beautiful. That's really helpful. Ash, how do you define it with clients?
I would say the same thing. I just add the word wounding to that, right? There's often a wounding that has happened that I feel like kind of brings on that shame. And to your point, I think it's within larger communities to like more immediate interpersonal wounds or trauma that can happen.
I've heard said, and I've been wanting to actually check this with you guys, I've heard people say shame is often I am bad, and maybe guilt or other feelings are I feel bad. Would you say that this feels like an accurate way to kind of suss this out internally?
Yeah, I would say that shame is difficult because it often provides kind of an activation or a collapse internally. I think often people withdraw with shame.
Totally.
I think guilt is a very healthy emotion, or can be a very healthy emotion when we externalize it into like, this is a behavior that I don't like, or I did something maybe bad, or, I think then there's something we can do. We have control over our behavior. We don't necessarily have control about how we show up as self.
Yes. It's almost like there's more movement if I'm not making it so personal.
Yes.
I can actually do something about feeling bad if it's not this like state that I am. That makes a lot of sense. Okay. Very helpful. So now that we have this definition, I was curious to pull this into sex therapy world, since that is what we do. Where do y'all see shame show up in your sex therapy work, and how do you recognize it maybe in your sexuality?
All the time, everywhere. I think when we look at dominant culture that we experience, I think we have to talk about like what cultural values we hold as a dominant culture. And I think a lot of, the foundation of how we've set our society is based on a lot of sexual shame. And I think we don't talk about or educate about sexuality very well. Right. As a culture as a whole. So I think that there's a lot of, discovery and questions and identity issues happening in private that people, they see the silence that's happening and say, I must be broken, weird, different, bad, if this is not being talked about, or I'm not seeing my experience mirrored out in the world. So we see this show up in so many areas of our work.
It's like the silence almost communicates something about this is bad. That's why we're not speaking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember who said it, but somebody, it might even be Brene Brown, but shame lives in the dark.
Yeah.
Like shame kind of gets fed in that silent space.
Do y'all have an example, maybe to like literalize it for folks? Do you have an example of a shame-based thought on sexuality that you hear a lot?
Oh yeah, it's my fault. I should have more sex. I should be doing XYZ, whatever
my erection should be hard and last this long. We should be having sex this many times a week.
Yes.
I should be more attractive. I should be, we hear demand statements, should, must, have to. Shame is usually present.
Yeah. Oh, that's hugely helpful for folks listening, because I was curious how someone could find this in themselves. Demand statements, should, supposed to, expectations on yourself.
I will say, when I work with clients, and I don't know how, I build rapport with people, but I will often kind of get to a point of being like, we don't want to shit ourselves. And it's a humorous way, I think, of sort of teaching about this place, especially because I think we've talked about this before, but like shame very much, you might have even taught me this, but it was like this in the therapy room, we kind of see this like push-pull of like, I want to talk about it, I don't want to talk about it. And like I, as a somatic body person, you almost see like people physically kind of in that. So I think when we can add some of that like just levity to understanding it, or they can catch themselves and be like, oh no, I almost shit on myself, right? Like again, it's just another way that I see it. And
well, I love humor as a reparative experience, because I think shame often feels very hot and heavy in the body.
Yes.
I think oftentimes people feel constriction, they feel weight, somatically. A lot of times like that hot face flushing happens. So I think to like shift somatically, and I think build safety, and even just beginning to talk about those topics that induce that body-based reaction becomes really important. And I think part of what we do.
I came in today really wanting to connect this body piece, since it is such a visceral experience. I think so visceral that people literally do not want to withstand it and bring it in and experience it, especially like with someone, which I think can be really intense. Do we have, is there any way you guys could describe maybe how this impacts nervous system first, and then I'd love to actually get into how this impacts pleasure kind of secondarily as well. But like, how does shame interact with the nervous system?
It does one of two things. It either throws people into fight flight, so I'm either going to flee from it, or I'm going to fight, I'm going to be defensive against.
Oh, sure.
Or I think more often than not, we see a collapse. I think we see this shutdown, this freeze. And sometimes early shame-based experiences, because I think shame starts very young for most of us. Like, don't touch that, that's inappropriate. Girls don't do that, boys don't do that. I think those messages start really young, and oftentimes I think that's where those early activating experiences happen. But over time, people kind of collapse into that freeze state. So I think oftentimes we're seeing people come in very shut down.
Yes. Do you feel like, do either of you guys have ways in which you help the nervous system regulate and kind of come back from that state when you're in session with someone? What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts with a therapist's body. I think shame, because it is, again, a pro-social emotion, part of what has to happen is this reparative experience. So I think there has to be a rapport built. So you have to trust your therapist and vice versa. I think there has to be a level of safety there, so that when these disclosures happen that people feel shame around, I think it's important for the therapist to remain curious and open, but I think also educating. Like, we're not sitting here judging you. We're just curious about this experience and how it relates to you and your sense of self, and what messages have been built up around this. And shame really dissipates when, again, we can shift it from like, you are bad, to, well, maybe this thing that you did, you don't view that as healthy or want it to be a part of your life. So how can we then shift, right? I think there's a lot of different things, a lot of different issues, right? Because I think we're talking about behavior, but it also can be body image, desire discrepancy, performance related, gender roles, I think there's trauma, I think religious moral shame. So I think there's a lot of different processes. It looks different based on what you're dealing with. But I think sharing it with someone you feel safe with and having them attune and really meet you there, I think, begins to change how the body experiences, because when it experiences safety and connection, then it says, well, I don't need to be afraid. I don't need to close this off. I don't need to hide this. I can talk about it.
Yes.
And I can figure out how to come into a different relationship with it, no matter what it is.
This is no longer a thing that's going to risk abandonment and rejection.
Yes. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. When we pull in then this pleasure piece, I can kind of already start to connect the dots of like, if I'm afraid of rejection and abandonment, not sure how pleasure is going to happen from that place. Are there any other ways that you guys really find that shame interacts with the ability to experience pleasure?
Well, I think a lot of like Emily Nagoski's work with this one, right? How we talk about sex, and it's all about context, right? And safety is one of those pieces that she talks about, and talking about context, right? We need that safety. We need maybe even, I don't know if you'd say like this, but like certain conditions for us to show up and actually be able to receive pleasure, right?
Yes.
However we define that within our bodies.
Yeah, typically most people need to be in a parasympathetic, meaning a calm, regulated state. I think you need to be able to access those sensations. When you're going into fight, flight, or freeze, pieces of the body are shutting down and conserving energy, or putting energy to a specific place. So it's hard to feel. And I think it doesn't cause a complete shutdown, right? I think we talk about driving with the e-brake on. Like sometimes you're feeling safe enough that sexy things are happening and you're having sex, but are you fully experiencing the pleasure you could be? Maybe not.
Yeah, if I'm feeling so much fear around abandonment and rejection, I could imagine I'm more vigilant, more up here, a lot harder to be present in your body, experience sensation. I was thinking this because I know we've done an episode on couples therapy, and I think a lot of the time you might see shame in yourself, but you also see a lot of couples come in where like, it's my partner feels all this shame. I want to talk about sex. I want to kind of go towards this. My partner feels so much shame. I can't break through to them. How would you talk to somebody about like approaching or interacting with shame in a partner or in a loved one? It doesn't even have to be a romantic context, but how do you help people approach shame in their day-to-day lives if they're not a therapist, if it's not a therapy space?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to say sometimes coming into therapy, it feels easier to talk about that shame, because I think you have to recognize, I think when partners are having a trouble talking to each other about really vulnerable things, or things that they may feel like, again, like I'm bad, you might reject me. I think it becomes harder because that's the person you don't want to lose. That's the person you don't want to disappoint.
It's like the highest stakes.
Yeah. And especially with sex, I think, again, there's so many messages like, I'm broken. Why can't I do this thing? Why can't I connect to this person I really, really love in the way that I want, or perform the way that I want? So I think it becomes really hard. I do think partners accidentally reinforce the lack of safety there sometimes.
Definitely.
And so I would just say, like, be curious, ask questions, but in a non-judgmental way, like exploring, like, I'm curious why this feels so hard for you to talk about, or why you're so defensive around this. I think get curious and kind of start creating and building safety. But I think also recognize as a partner, like your own role in reinforcing maybe messages. Or being defensive yourself, or having your own insecurities. Because I think, again, we're not taught how to be in sexual relationships in healthy ways.
Completely.
So I think we accidentally create a lack of safety, which of course most people want safety with their partner. But I think that feeling of like, ooh, I can't say that because it would hurt them, or, you know. I think that happens all the time. So I think coming into therapy sometimes is helpful because you have a third party that has no stake in the game. That you can begin to kind of unravel and have that person kind of guide you through those sticky spots together.
They can kind of be the curious one when it feels really personal for you.
Or even demonstrate what that can look like, right? Because like we talk a lot about the somatic pieces where, you know, it is, we can't say, tell me why do you feel that way, right? Like the tone matters, right? The way that our bodies are feeling in that moment, our own even reactions or relational things, to your point of like, we don't get taught how to have that healthy relationship. So sometimes we create these dynamics we don't even realize, and we could be two great people who just don't know, again, how to get through those sticky spots. So I think there's just so many layers besides the words of asking why or what's going on that matter.
It makes me think a little bit about how so often in our couples work or couples sex therapy work, There's often this like pointing finger. You won't talk to me about it. You shut down. And it sounds important for folks to maybe pause and recognize the like capital M meaning that they are assigning to their partner's shutdown or shame.
Yeah.
If I'm internalizing and personalizing you not wanting to talk to me
Yeah.
as, well, it must be that you don't like me. And it's almost like shame is contagious.
Yeah.
That would probably be helpful to reflect on so that it's not just I'm spotlight on you, which is kind of helpful for folks. I think very often it feels like we want to do the magic thing that'll make my partner open up, but we don't, but we think it's outside of ourselves.
Right.
Oh, how funny.
Yeah.
Yes. Before we wrap, are there any final pieces of this topic today? We kind of were just dipping a toe in. For folks that are really finding that they're relating to this. I think this is a huge thing to bring in, obviously, to your therapy space. Are there any final bits of this topic that you feel like we didn't cover that you want to throw out there? Misconceptions, sources if people want to learn more, places to start even, just generally, like if someone's kind of connecting to this, where would you direct them?
Yeah, there's a lot of research on shame.
Yeah.
I like some of Brene Brown's research around shame.
Love.
I would maybe start there for her, but there's a lot of people that speak on this topic. I think it's actually, especially in the sexuality space. I would say one big misconception I just want to kind of draw attention to is like, I do see people not wanting to shed shame because they feel like it's a motivating behavior. I do see some people like correlating like shame with like a positive motivation or as like a moral confirmation that you're on the right path, which I think is just a bit like there's been an association made there that we want to kind of tease apart, because I think that can get kind of warped. And I think there's ways to move in strength-based ways and find motivation there versus like this fear-based motivation space.
Absolutely. I think that's actually a really helpful point, because I do see folks often maybe get heavy quotation marks, if you're just listening to this, good results. And so then they will be like, well, then I have to keep this.
Well, and I think it's recognizing like those activated states, fight, flight, that is about movement.
It is activated.
So, you know, and I think I see this especially too with people who have maybe neurodivergence, ADHD, because your brain is just working a little bit differently. It has a different motivation center, you know, kind of response. So I think in this kind of dominant world, especially if your brain works a little bit differently, I think I don't want to say it's an easier way to kind of find a solution, but I think it's more accessible based on kind of how we operate as a society. But there's other ways. There's other ways to operate.
Yes, you don't have to beat yourself up to get what you want. Ash, what about you? Anything that you feel like we didn't cover? Can't talk today.
No, I think I was gonna say like you can't out shame the shame, right? You know, because I do think that there's often a idea of like, all right, I'm gonna get this shame and I'm gonna put it out there. Like you said, it's a lot easier, I think, to come to therapy, and maybe I hear this a lot, and I don't know if this is always shame, but people say it's a lot easier for me to share it with strangers than, again, people who I'm close to, right? So I think sometimes people are like, I'm therapying, right? I'm A+ by like talking about it, and like I think there's like a recognition of how quickly or easy we can almost like switch. I don't know if this is, you help me come up with the words, but like almost like we can like swap shames.
Yes.
You know, where it's like I'm talking about it. I'm you know, I say shame dies when we share our story in safe places, right? But again, are we actually feeling that felt sense of safety in our bodies? Are we moving too quickly to feel like we're getting rid of something, right? I think I talk about this with a lot of emotions of, you know, we can't move too much too soon, because that's trauma, right? You know, and so your shame journey, I think it just needs to be recognized as
no, I think you're making a good point where like people will feel like they have to be working hard. I think that's that activated state too. So I'm working hard to get out of shame, but that's another activated state.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I think it's like we have to, from going from that shutdown place to a more maybe regulated space, right? We go through that activation of like, I'm doing something about this, right? To your point. So I think that's where we need that support. You know, like this isn't
that's lovely.
Whether it's a therapist or again just a safe person, right? I think being able to have somebody share in that, I don't want to say to check you at these points, right? But to kind of check out what is actually the function of this moment.
Yes.
So
Lovely. Oh, wonderful. To end out today, Ashley, since this is your first time with us, we end our podcast with a ray of light, similar to what we do in our meetings here at Soleil. So this could be a bit of hope, a sentiment you want people to walk away with, just something that people can hold on to as they leave. You don't have to go first. I'll let you think on it. Since,
I know, I need to think. I'm like,
please take your time. Rachel, do you have a ray of light on shame that you want people to hold on to today?
Oh, just that shame is very normal.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, you don't have to be alone in it. That's lovely. I always tell people too, especially when people come in with a lot of shame into therapy, I'm like, I've heard it all. Like, it's going to take a lot to shock me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like the thing that feels so heavy and scary and bad to you is probably not going to feel that way.
I've heard 5 times this week.
Yeah. So I think I think
that's lovely.
Yeah. If you're wanting to move out of that, I think trust that you can.
I love that. Mm-hmm. Do you need a moment, or you've got one?
Oh my gosh, that's so good.
I know.
Why? Yes, everything she said.
What she said.
What she said. I second that. Yeah, I definitely, I think similarly, that is just like, you know, one thing that, again, I think Emily, I keep referring to Emily Nagoski today. She's great. Love her.
She's the star.
But, you know, her whole message in her book is like, everything's normal. So if we're tying it to sex, if we're tying it to pleasure, right? I mean, just thinking about shame is like, shame is just the message of taking very normal human behavior and telling you that it needs to be silenced, right? And telling you that it needs to. So I think for me, it was going to be sort of just like, hey, it's normal. I think we all have had a version of shame, and and it's okay to go ask for help.
I actually think it's meaningful that you both landed in a similar spot, because it really underlines the point of what we're talking about today. So I love that. Thank you both for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you to everybody who listened. If you feel like you're connecting to this, you want to reach out for a session with one of our therapists, please feel free to check out our website and let us know. We'll get you set up with somebody, and maybe we can have you not be alone in your shame. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Thanks so much.
Quick reminder before you go. This podcast is for education and general information. It isn't therapy, and it's not a substitute for personalized mental health or medical care. We're therapists, but we can't offer individual advice through a podcast. So take what resonates, leave what doesn't, and if you're dealing with something tender or intense, we really encourage you to connect with a licensed professional who can support you personally.